Let us talk a moment about non-violent organisation, because in the 80s, apartheid Africa had the ANC were an international force, highly respected by unions and syndications around the world and groups who wanted to support them. At the moment, you have this very tiny grassroots, non-violent movement within Palestine. Bilen, Nilin, who, by the way, this Friday were attacked as they went non-violently towards the wall, again with tear gas by the Israeli soldiers there. Well, let me ask you this. Why hasn't Fateh been this group from the beginning?
First of all, non-violent struggle is a daily occurrence in Palestine. The major feature of Palestinian resistance is popular non-violence. It is better structured in Ne'alin and Bilain than elsewhere, but most of the struggles against the wall and etc. So, but we need to adopt it as a philosophy, and we need national consensus around it. And I believe today the ground is there to have it adopted as the philosophy and the strategy. There are no more taboos in the Palestinian debate. I believe that the armed struggle is an instrument towards an end, a means towards an end, and not an end in itself. I always used to believe during our days in Beirut, in Lebanon, that we needed to remain a military factor until we are recognized as a diplomatic actor. Today, I believe nobody disputes that the Palestinians are a diplomatic actor. I hope for more cohesion on our side, but that's our own problem and our own making. But today we have been recognized as the indispensable diplomatic actor, so I think we can shelve the military factor and come back again to the popular non-violent resistance.
Everybody in the region would like a non-violent resolution to this 60-year-old Nakba, as your people call it. But let's go through some figures this week coming out of the West Bank and Gaza. Israeli troops kidnapped at least 32 Palestinian civilians across the West Bank. Among those kidnapped this week, 8 children, says a Palestinian source. East Jerusalem, 7 people were injured. Al-Bustan neighbourhood, demolition of 2 homes. Witnesses said soldiers attacked them with batons and fired tear gas. The municipality also demolished 2 homes owned by Palestinians east of Jerusalem Old City.
I think the conclusion to what I heard from you, which is accurate and even beneath the reality, other misbehaviors have occurred. Vast numbers of olive trees have been uprooted, etc. every week, every day. I always said that, unfortunately for us Palestinians, the Nakba is not an event that has happened frozen in history sometime in 1948. The Nakba, unfortunately, is still an ongoing process. And as I told you, the Israeli policy and strategy is how to acquire as much of Palestinian geography as possible with as little of Palestinian demography as possible. The Nakba is still, up to today, an ongoing process.
So if we accept then from these figures and what you're saying that peace isn't coming from the Israel military machine, from the settlement building, then is it time at last to dissolve the Palestinian Authority? What are you an authority over? You don't have your own borders, you don't have a train service, you don't own your water rights, you don't have a port or an airport. What about this, because this is catching light in Ramallah, on the streets and in political circles, dissolve the PA, go back to the PLO and say we're at war?
And this is one of the options being discussed in Palestinian circles, and I'm a person who wants to go in depth in all the options available. Let me tell you why I was in favor, to begin with the birth of the Palestinian Authority. I believe that we had a unique, and we are still in a unique, unprecedented situation. We had our legitimate leadership in exile, we had our demography scattered, we had our geography occupied. In political science, a state or a future state is defined as an authority on a demography, on a geography. With the birth of the national authority in Palestine, we were at the beginning of a process of normalization of Palestinian society.
It was a fantasy normalization.
Out of the exceptionalism we were in. You say fantasy. Yes, that project has been attacked and suffocated and strangulated. We were pushed into the economic decline, into a deliberate economic decline by the Israelis. All those checkpoints were there to suffocate. And Sarah Roy, a friend of mine, fabricated the concept of the de-development of Palestine as a deliberate policy by the, yes, all that. But that's the struggle and that's the challenge, and it's up to us to find the response to that challenge. Dissolving the PA, is it the right response today to the challenge we are encountering? I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's one of the issues that is being floated.
Mr. Safieh, you've lived your life largely in exile, although you were a child of Jerusalem. Can you describe the moment after a quarter of a century when you went back into Jerusalem to try and claim your right to live there?
It was the most moving moment in my history. You know, I was born in 1950 and had to leave Jerusalem in 66 to go to university in Europe. And 67 occurred and my city, my hometown, was occupied. My family used to come before 1948 from West Jerusalem, and they had to move from west to east. So in a way, we were refugees in the same city, which is the most painful type of being a refugee in the same street. I remember growing up, being taken to the roof of our house and being shown our house, original house, several streets away, but yet another planet. 67, I was abroad, age 17. The war occurred. East Jerusalem was occupied. The Israelis annexed it, made a census, and as a result, I and my whole generation of Palestinian students, we became legally non-existent, and I was in exile forcibly, so diasporized for 27 years. And in the end of 93, because of the Oslo process, I could come back in a private visit on my Belgian passport with my Belgian wife and 2 children for the first time.
Where did you land? Was it Tel Aviv?
We landed as Belgian tourists in a private visit through Tel Aviv airport. And on the drive from Lod, because Tel Aviv airport is in the middle of a Palestinian city, which is Lidda, just as Tel Aviv is over a Palestinian village in the outskirts of the previously metropolitan city Jaffa. All this is
now,
history.
I don't know what you expected when you arrived there, but you attempted to get the right to stay, and who greeted you in the government department?
Interestingly, I was then thinking to abandon the diplomatic choice of mine, to go back to Jerusalem, ask for what is called family reunification, and to start a magazine. And I had the whole plan and the whole strategy. I wanted to have an English weekly called The Palestinian. I had even started thinking of what type of recruitment. All Palestinian intellectuals and non-Palestinians were ready to contribute op-ed pieces for that magazine.
You described it well in one of your writings as a humiliating process where someone who had been there, you said, less than 2 weeks, told you you couldn't stay. Finally, your father gave a very telling quote that I'd like you to repeat in English and in Arabic.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of my father in 67, when we were knocked out of the census because we happened not to be there when it was conducted. He said in 48 we lost our homeland, and in 67 we lost our children, because I come from a family of 3 children, a sister and 2 brothers, including myself. My sister luckily had studied abroad and come back, and I and my brother were trapped abroad. In Arabic, the sentence is poetically worded: in 48 ضوعنا بلادنا وفي 67 ضوعنا أولادنا. And that was the sad story, which is not only mine but many.
Thank you very much, Mr. Safieh. This has been Face to Face with me, Lauren Booth. In this episode, we explored Middle East politics with my guest, the Palestinian diplomat Afif Safieh. Next week, we'll be back with another guest discussing the issues that shape your world. Thank you for joining us.
The headlines. The leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution says the enemies have resorted to soft war against the country, adding Iran's first priority is to confront their plots. In Pakistan, people take to the streets of Islamabad to protest